Cool. Sweet. I don't know about your morning, Barry, but I started out over in Mathland over in Andover and was thinking about how can we reconsider other ways of showing mastery for learning for students in math. And as a certified world language teacher, I think about that too in world languages. So my hope is that folks begin thinking about creative ways outside of what they're already doing to challenge themselves and challenge students with unique ways to be able to do that. I'm sure you're very familiar with Screencastify. There's a newish feature within Screencastify that they pushed out called Submit. And what is so seamless about Submit is that now it even lives within Google Classroom, and I'll show you how to do that.
Oh, awesome.
Also, yes, it's now integrated, which is wicked sweet. So, you know, a little bit about just asking as a social studies teacher, what might be evidence of learning. One of my one of my highlights from last year was working with Chanel Galea and using Screencast as students did an assignment, which is one of the 3 examples that we'll look at. Giving tours of empires. They had 2 empires that they were going to compare, and or civilizations. I forget which the perfect terminology that she used, and it'll come out in that Screencastify example.
Okay.
I want to look at this not only from the teacher side, but also on the student created side. So students having an opportunity for a more student-centered opportunity. And then I also want to show where those resources are. On the Tech and Innovation link, which is linked within these slides, you'll see the ins and outs of how to create an assignment that will then set it up in Classroom and be ready for you to assess and for students to use. What could this look like? I talked about Chanel's example with the screencast of students kind of giving a tour of empires. When you think about a task that students might be interested in sharing or might be a way for us to see evidence for learning in social studies, what might that look like to you when you think about tasks or learning targets that maybe are coming up or that you've recently uncovered?
We did one during the pandemic where I'm giving kids choice on how to present the information that they've learned. So they could do a written type, which of course goes anywhere from just, a short little report.
Yep.
Or writing obituaries,
Wow.
Or a diary. Here's a diary of, hey, pretend you were there. What was going on?
Cool.
Make sure you hit these key points. And then there were also other ways that you could present, and meaning they could build a website.
Mm-hmm.
They could, the one that got the most play was kids were doing podcasts.
Sure.
And there were, at one point, we had 3 kids from 3 different U.S. history classes.
Wow.
Worked together, collaborated, and they came up with a 10-minute podcast on the civil rights movement.
That's amazing.
And we were, using the standards-based grading as far as that goes. And it was, all 3 of them got a 4 because they did an excellent job.
Cool.
And they did the background work because of the way they presented it. It
Right.
was clean and it was crisp, and it was really kind of cool the way they were talking back and forth. And I just thought it was wonderful. So
cool. Hey, Jim, welcome. Thanks for joining.
You're muted.
Hey, no, I know. Now I'm unmuted. Sure, I was just kind of interested in what you got going here.
Absolutely. It's good to see you.
Yeah, well, it's good to be seen. Yeah.
Good to be seen, he says. That's fabulous. Thanks for those examples, Barry. I really appreciate you sharing. I would love to hear that podcast sometime when you get a chance, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, sure. I'll share it with you.
Yeah, fabulous. That's cool. Super collaborative. When I was listening to you describe it, it just screamed collaboration to me also. We obviously saw a lot of instructor side of use of Screencastify. Jonathan Kell's example here, doing kind of a week 2 welcome to his students. He does a nice job of kind of breaking the ice with students and kind of warming them up a little bit to build some relationships, in addition to getting right to the content about math during that week and kind of walking students through that. So we saw a lot of those using Screencastify. Tech tutorials are ways that teachers kind of help students through this. I use it a lot in my office, actually. Probably no surprise at all. Jim probably does the same exact thing. But then also thinking about like an open house. Not a lot of people are attending open house during the pandemic, and understandably so. So a good way to push out information would be to use a screencast from the teacher side. So probably no surprise there. My colleague Kevin Bross and I attended a presentation done by the Beckerman couple out of Elk River. I believe it's Paul and Pam, our 2 tech integration specialists. And Barry, you'll find that within these slides that, and Jim, of course, the same for you, is that when you click into this image here of the slideshow, you'll actually see that it will bring you to the slides of this presentation. And I want to back out of this. So if I click on this, you'll see that there's a link that should come up right below here. And if it's not for some reason, I can get you the link to that.
Oh yeah, it's there.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So one of the things that stood out was that table of contents page. I'll get you to the right page here as soon as my lag disappears. It's even laggy on a hardwired connection here. Slide 7 is a table of contents, which to some folks might feel a little bit overwhelming. But if you just think about what are 1 to 3 that you'd consider putting into play, certainly, Barry, that podcast example would fit the bill here. But I'm thinking of the work that John Almost right now is engaged with digital portfolios. He's considering about bringing students the opportunity to create a portfolio that they can articulate to a future employer, a future post-secondary option for school setting, college, vocational school, whatever is the right fit for the student. Building a website, Barry, you mentioned that too. Creating an infographic we see frequently in world languages for kids to communicate ideas using other tools. So my suggestion for you today is to think about what are 1 to 3. If it's not Screencast, what are 1 to 3? Now, obviously, I'm going to uncover a lot about Screencastify today, but I just think that the possibilities are endless here. And Barry, one thing that I was hearing when you were describing is that we don't need like an academic honesty checker. We don't need a turn it in online to really understand that this is the student's own work. We can easily tell by how a product is designed that they did the work on their own, and it's not just a copy paste into a slide deck or onto a Google Doc. You know that it's an authentic resource created by the student. So that's another piece to this, is you don't have to engage in the is it their own work game, which is not a fun one for any teacher. So that's a little bit about that session from Ties that I wanted to bring back. And again, that's a resource. I would consider sharing that with your CT. I am visiting soon with Justine Weavers Morgan. I think it's pronounced Bergquist. And the 3rd member of that CT, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But we're going to dig into that here soon also. Okay. They created a Google Classroom integration function within it that I can demo. It really has made it wicked easy to be able to do that. We all have an account on A Schools to go to screencastify.com. There are 3 major tabs here. The kind of initial one during the pandemic that we saw was record and edit. And then now you'll see that this tab called submit is ready to go. So basically it's intuitive. Click new assignment, decide if you're going to go I'm not going to say old school, but the first way that they created this versus just creating it within Google Classroom, and then click next. Decide what's the best fit. Some people just want to have screen recording only. Some people want just a webcam only, like you would do for like a video blog, for example, and then screen and webcam both, like you're seeing today during the Google Meet. So I'm just going to choose that one for whatever task that I'm doing. I'm just going to call this test 4, probably because I've given test 1, 2, and 3 a name already. Sure. And then I'll click next, and now it's going to ask me, hey, who is this for? So I'm going to choose one that I know isn't going to bug anybody that's on an assignment. I'm going to assign it to all my students in that section. If I'm operating in standard space, I'm going to choose 4. Come on. And then I'll give it a made-up due date. I'm going to assign this to Kevin behind me for Friday during the MEA. I can even assign it a topic within Google Classroom, and I can click to assign it, or I can schedule it like we do in Classroom, where you can kind of keep things hidden until we schedule it for another time. I'm going to click on assign, and when it creates it, we should see a function of show in classroom. So I'm going to click it. And one of the next features here is that just to be able to view the assignment as is. So I'm going to view it on Classroom, make sure it looks good. And now that has been assigned out and ready to go. And what's nice too is that students just see this link as it's ready to go. And this would be a part of your instruction. So if you want kids, so one of the ideas that I had today in math was like show your work. Like show your work on how you work through this math problem, this word problem in particular. That'd be a really great way to capture a student task for evidence of learning in math. And you would just have that be a part of your instructions and then just say, hey, click the Screencastify button. And then on the student side, this is how students engage in that. Now, I've recorded a tutorial for both the teacher side of things and the student side of things. This is how it looks like on the student side, which I think is important to view, right? So that you can kind of walk kids through how this works. So I would say, hey, I want to screen, I want to share that much. So you'll notice here, I can just kind of walk through my recording as the student, and I'll just click on stop recording when I'm done. And then if I were a student, I would have the option to click submit. It's just a few steps. When I did this last year with Chanel, we were teaching kids how to create screencasts as if they were the teachers. And it was closer to like 4 to 7 steps. It was a lot more steps. This to me is seamless and integrated. It takes the focus off of technology and onto the task at hand, which is more important for kids to be able to just see, hey, what are we digging into in social studies or in whatever topic that might be the case. So that's a little bit of a preview on the integration within Classroom. While I think of it, I also want to point out the resources on the Tech and Innovation page. This is linked at BHS Info page under Technology. And you'll see here that there are screencast resources. The last ones that I've added here are for Screencastify Submit. And there's a handout. You'll see that there's a handout and a tutorial if you want to use those just to post onto your classroom to share with students. But don't hesitate to invite me to think about, hey, can you stop in third hour next Thursday? Because I want to pitch this. You can think about sending kids down to the Innovation Center. I'm more than willing to walk students through step by step on how to do this. However, I think it's going to be pretty obvious how this works with students.
Yeah.
Questions? Oh, yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to tell you, I already have it set up to where I can get right to my Google Classroom that quickly. So that was
Fabulous.
That's pretty easy.
Sweet. That is pretty sweet. Student tasks or proficiencies. These are ones that came up immediately. So like facts, walking somebody through a recipe. Poetry is one of the examples we're going to look at here shortly. Recording an interview would be other options. Here are 3 examples. One I'm going to play for us in real time is an example out of English. I had a chance to collaborate with Olivia Dargis about 2 years ago on this. And here's an example of what her kids did with poetry. One of their learning targets was to have poetry read out loud, and she wanted to have kids put images along with that. So here comes her example. As soon as my link cooperates, I just changed the features within here. Maybe I monkeyed with it too much. I can get Olivia's link here shortly. Basically, it's a lot of what you might expect with, gosh, I must have monkeyed with this and made it, we'll pull Olivia's example here shortly. I had mentioned too the resources here and the supports. Again, these live in the BHS info page, is linked to the technology and innovation page. You'll see that there's a handout and a tutorial here for that example. What ideas come up while I'm grabbing Olivia's example? What ideas come up right away that you haven't already explored, Barry or Jim? That you think that would be a great task to be able to uncover with kids?
Well, I was just thinking if they're going to, we have them do live presentations, but some kids are, petrified of being in front of a classroom. This would be a way for them to just share it with me.
Perfect.
You could do your part right here and take all that garbage out of the way for you.
Here, I'll pause the audio. Sorry about that, Barry. Yep, it does. It takes it out of the way. And one of the questions that I frequently get about tasks like these is, Daryl, it's not the first take. I really want the first take. What if kids have a chance to repeat and practice over and over? I don't.
Doesn't practice make perfect?
I guess I don't see the issue with it, but again, it might vary based on the discipline, right? Or the content of what you want. Do you want the first take only, or do you want kids to be able to practice? That's going to vary by instructor. I don't know. My goals might be a lot different than other people. Here's Olivia's example while we think about other potential uses for it.
Is there supposed to be sound with the pictures right now?
You're not hearing it right now?
No.
Dirty bird. Thanks for the heads up. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just dump this in the chat. And why don't I give you just 30 seconds to kind of listen to the first 30 seconds to kind of give you a little flavor of it.
Bad Day by Shane Kozan. Read by Emma Geisel. There will be bad days. Be calm.
So you get a sense pretty quickly about what Olivia's goals were with it, right? Poetry, you want to get a student voice on there, add some images. She likely did this in Google Slides. I saw kids using Prezi. I saw kids using a lot of options. Again, takes a little bit of that anxiety out, which Barry had mentioned too, is that kids want to have a chance to share what they know, but then also maybe not necessarily be in front of a classroom doing that each time.
I think they also get to add that imagery in there. I mean, I think that's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, agreed. One of the other things that I noticed with Screencastify is now they have these badge options. So like Excellent Editor was one of them that you can find at courses.screencastify.com. And I actually just started the editor one. I think it's the editor one. Yep, edit your video. And I'm just 14% into it. I just started it today after lunch. So if you want to uncover more, you can do that. And they have kind of 4 preloaded courses that are really good. They're really well designed, and they get a little badge out of it here at the end that maybe you want to add to your, I don't know, to your resume or portfolio, your email signature, whatever. So that's another little option too that you may want to consider. What questions come up right away? And most importantly, what's next? What are you thinking about putting into play next out of the ideas that came out of it? Barry, you've already got one of these created in Classroom already. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just doing a little test there, but
Mhm.
this would be something that I would definitely run through with kids that want to do a video piece,
Okay.
or even explain their PowerPoint, with not being on camera.
Yeah.
So they could have some words behind it, so they don't have to write as much. They could have short pieces, but then they could give their explanations.
Perfect.
So that would help them that way as well, especially kids that don't write very well. They can talk through it.
Do you see this being particularly useful in one of the courses that you're teaching this try, a future try?
Well, I'm only teaching U.S. history right now for the
Yep.
first 2 tries, and I can see this even in my civics class, try 3, giving these options to let kids show what they know.
Awesome.
I mean, I would rather do this than have to read 110 papers.
So well said. So well said. I totally understand.
And I like Jim laughing there. All right.
There you go. He's got a great laugh too.
I got it. Who would want to do all that reading? Not me.
I get it. Any other questions or comments from either of you?
Well, I just think that the uses for this are endless. I mean, you could pick a class and you could probably list a dozen different ways that you could use this to, simple as showing student work to, like you say, showing students that might be a little less apt to speak up in class. So they're just, I think they're endless for this kind of activity.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You know where the resources are, Jim, if you want to relay to the folks at Champlain Park.